Hey, so I wrote this program to calculate um, recipes or grocery hauls and to do like proportions and to calculate macros and total calories and grams of carbohydrate and fat and protein and sugar. And it just pulls from a MySQL database of whatever you want to put in there. And then you have multiple selections. So you choose whatever items you want to put on the recipe, and then you choose the volume or different unit. You could choose to put so many dollars worth of bananas, or you can choose so many calories worth of bananas, or if you're trying to meet a certain amount of fat or carbohydrate intake for a particular item on the list, you can do that, or servings. So you just select like what you buy every week. And then you can start so the unit is whatever's on your receipt. Whatever it costs on your receipt is your unit, like your one package. So if you go through a certain amount in a week, you can see that like this comes with two jars. So for the unit I put, if I go through in 1 week only one jar, then I just put 0.5. And then you get this readout of the per each item. I'm pretty sure it's kind of self-explanatory. I won't go into it too much. But then you get the grams per dollar and calories per dollar, and you can use this your calories per day if you're trying to meet a certain goal or not go over or under, or for estimation purposes. If you plug in a different amount, then it estimates how much it's going to cost you. Per day, per week, per month, per year. But these other pieces of the readout, this right here is the macros, which is like percent of calories from carbohydrate, percent of calories from fat, and percent of calories from protein. And then you can see it'll do that for an entire everything you buy at the grocery, or you can put in just certain amounts by the serving to do like recipes. So you get the idea. So I could put in like 2 servings of just peanut butter and bread, 1 serving each, and then you're gonna get like, you see a cost values and rock and roll, but you can see how these, if I select 0, then everything just disappears and it recalculates sort of. This right here, the code to I didn't write that in yet, it just leaves up whatever's there, but these totals down here, they get resorted every time you change. But anyway, the code, this area down here, this is what the HTML is. It's written in PHP and Java, MySQL, and HTML. So this is just the HTML part, but the PHP file, which is like the page on the server that processes everything and pulls from the database, it is it looks like this, and it's simpler. You can see how it's only so long, and it's only like this long, but this HTML part is like super long. Because it's got to populate these pieces of data from the database, and so it's got to, for as many entries there are in the database, it has to pump out more and more and more. So if there's like, for every entry in this database, it actually has replicated the selections that many times. Oops. So as many entries as there are is as many times as it is replicated, and some of the stuff is just hidden. But over here on the PHP, you can see that it's not really all that complicated. Well, it is kinda. Everything is just one thing at a time. And the code originally it only had this portion. And that's all there was to the code. But then I added in an extra while loop, which that's the loop that pulls all the information from the database. So the while loop is going to run as many times as there are entries in the database based on this command. There's a query, and then there's it kind of like advances the database every time the loop is run. So there's actually, like, where originally with just this one there was only one loop, but now there's like two loops. So there's a big loop and then there's an inner loop. So you have to have different variables to distinguish between the pieces of information you're pulling. Anyway, that's where it gets kind of complicated. And then there's the pieces, the HTML, this little piece right here, all these little spans are just all this little information right here, and that gets replicated. And this is the portion that hides all this information, as well as that hides all of this information depending on the selections. And you have like if you're at the first or the 0, or if you're not at the 0, it does different things depending, so that you don't end up hiding everything. You only just hide everything that is not the first entry. And this is the part that pulls the information from the database, and it puts it in the code, and the if selection, that's if you choose the selection, or if that is the selection based on this piece of code right here and this piece of code, then it declares your variables. So this would make it the first selections. And Java is object oriented. So what this is like, it creates the object, and then all these are just the object plus .id plus .cost plus .tag, and it looks like over here on the other side, that's a different piece of code. That's the part that resets everything, but this is the part that has the data. But anyway, that's pretty much the basics. And then you get down to the bottom, and there's the part that the Java that takes these variables and it plugs them in and places of the HTML. And then the part that if you choose this, these are where the calculations start. So like if you choose serving, then it has to do a certain calculation to figure out these numbers over here for you. And the calculations are different for serving and for gram and for unit or dollar. And then you get down here and you have to, before you can do any calculations, you have to declare the variables, because if you don't declare the variables and you try to use calculations and you try to use those variables and calculations, then you crash. It doesn't work right. But there's also this issue with the Java, because Java can handle multiple types of data in its variables. So what you do is you declare the variable first, and then you have to change the variable to from like just regular character or ASCII data over to numbers, so that whenever you start adding the numbers, it doesn't add them together like it thinks it's just two words. It knows that it's two numbers and not two words. And that's pretty much how that all works. It's fun stuff. I've put a lot of time into it. That's like pretty much the extent of PHP and JavaScript, MySQL, and HTML that I know. I've only written a couple things. I kind of lost my data one time. And here's how I get into the database and everything. This program, this is on a Linux Mint system. You can pretty much see what it is here. And I use this is Webmin. Use this. You can pretty much manage the entire thing from remotely, which is what I do. I usually just leave this computer off or the screen off, and I just access it from the other computer that's sitting right next to it. But there's the Apache, which is the HTTP server, which is what you browse. It's kind of like what is it, the web server? Shows up something like this. You know, your browser stuff. And then there's the database server, which has multiple databases. This is the one I put all the data for this program in. So it has a database and it has a table, and the table has these are the different columns, and they have different data types. Like this is decimal is a number with, you can see it has two floating points or something like that, or just characters. And then the data is all in here. And this is where it pulls everything from. And every time you add a row, you have to have a unique key so that it doesn't get confused. I used to use this other program, my PHP myadmin. This also lets you do pretty much the same thing, but now that Webmin has this built-in MySQL stuff going on, you can use, it's just a little bit less complicated, but this is more powerful technically. You can do SQL inputs and stuff. But yeah, that's a lot of what goes on with all this. Webmin will let you update and restart and shut down remotely, so you never have to turn on the what it allows me to do is not ever have to turn on the monitor. Anyway, that's just some hobby stuff that I do sometimes.